As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the dense forest, a group of friends huddled around a crackling campfire. They were on a weekend camping trip, seeking adventure and escape from the monotony of city life. Little did they know, their peaceful getaway would soon descend into a nightmare they would never forget. Among the group was Sarah, a fearless thrill-seeker always up for an adrenaline rush, Jake, her loyal and level-headed best friend, Mia, the adventurous and free-spirited nature lover, and Tyler, the jokester who never took anything too seriously. As the night wore on, laughter filled the air, accompanied by the soothing sounds of the wilderness. But just as they were about to retire to their tents, a chilling howl echoed through the trees, sending shivers down their spines. Sarah brushed it off as a harmless wolf, but Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The next morning, they discovered strange symbols carved into the trees surrounding their campsite. Mia, always fascinated by the supernatural, suggested they might be symbols of protection or warning. Tyler joked about it, dismissing the symbols as a prank by local teenagers. As night fell again, tension simmered among the group. Sarah tried to lighten the mood with scary stories around the fire, but the atmosphere remained tense. Suddenly, a rustling in the bushes interrupted their conversation. Jake, ever vigilant, grabbed a flashlight and ventured into the darkness to investigate. Before they could react, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, wielding a gleaming knife. Panic ensued as they scattered, trying to escape the clutches of the deranged killer. Sarah, Mia, and Tyler ran for their lives, their screams piercing the night. In the chaos, they became separated, each facing their own terrifying ordeal. Sarah stumbled upon an old bunker, its entrance concealed beneath layers of foliage. With nowhere else to turn, she descended into the darkness, hoping to find safety within its walls. Meanwhile, Mia and Tyler found themselves trapped in a labyrinth of tunnels beneath the cabin. Every turn led to dead ends or more horrors, a room filled with grisly trophies, a makeshift altar adorned with bones, and signs of recent activity indicating the killer was near. As they struggled to stay one step ahead of their pursuer, Sarah discovered the bunker held secrets of its own. It was a makeshift shelter filled with supplies, a hiding place for someone who knew the forest intimately. With no way to communicate with her friends, Sarah hunkered down, determined to survive the night. The sound of footsteps reverberated through the bunker, signaling the killer's approach. Sarah held her breath, clutching a makeshift weapon, ready to defend herself. But just as the killer reached the entrance, a deafening roar echoed through the forest. A massive creature, half human and half beast, burst into the bunker, its eyes wild with fury. The killer's screams mingled with the creature's roars as chaos erupted. In the confusion, Sarah seized the opportunity to escape, fleeing into the night as the forest erupted into chaos behind her. As dawn broke, Sarah stumbled upon a ranger station, her mind reeling from the horrors she had witnessed. She frantically told her story to the authorities, pleading for them to find her friends and stop the killer. But as the search teams combed the forest, they found no trace of the cabin, the bunker, or the creature. It was as though they had vanished without a trace, leaving only Sarah's harrowing account as evidence of the horrors that lurked in the woods. The forest stood silent and foreboding, the shadows stretching ominously as night descended once again. Sarah huddled in the ranger station, haunted by the events of the previous night. The authorities, skeptical of her wild tale, promised to continue the search for her missing friends but urged her to stay put for her own safety. Alone in the dimly lit cabin, Sarah's mind raced with questions. What had she witnessed in that forsaken bunker? Where were Mia, Tyler, and Jake? And what was the truth behind the monstrous creature that had saved her from the serial killer? As the hours dragged on, Sarah's solitude became suffocating. Every creak of the cabin, every rustle of the wind, sent her heart pounding in fear. She tried to distract herself with mundane tasks, but the memories of that night clawed at her mind, refusing to be ignored. When sleep finally overcame her, it brought no respite. Nightmares plagued her dreams, a relentless pursuit through dark woods, the killer's maniacal laughter echoing around her, and glimpses of her friends' terrified faces. Dawn broke with a muted light, casting a pall over the forest. Sarah ventured outside, hoping for news of the search efforts. But the ranger station remained eerily quiet, devoid of any signs of life. Anxiety gnawed at her as she realized she was truly alone in this desolate place. Determined to find answers, Sarah set out on her own search. She retraced their steps from the camping trip, following the trail of symbols they had discovered around their campsite. Each carved mark felt like a breadcrumb leading her deeper into the heart of darkness. Hours turned into days as Sarah pressed on, her determination fueled by desperation. She stumbled upon abandoned cabins, long forgotten by civilization, and remnants of old campfires, but there was no sign of her friends or the killer's lair. Nightfall brought with it a renewed sense of dread. Sarah sought shelter in an old hunting lodge, its walls adorned with faded trophies and the musty scent of decay lingering in the air. She barricaded the doors and windows, praying for a night of undisturbed rest. But the night had other plans. Whispers echoed through the lodge, disembodied voices speaking in hushed tones. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes. Sarah's grip on reality wavered as fear consumed her. Just as she thought she couldn't bear it any longer, a voice pierced the darkness, a familiar voice calling her name. Startled, Sarah searched the empty rooms, finding nothing but emptiness. Was it a trick of her exhausted mind, or was there someone else out there, watching her every move? Morning brought little solace as Sarah ventured out once more, determined to uncover the truth. She stumbled upon an old cemetery hidden deep in the woods, its tombstones weathered and forgotten. Among them, she found a name etched in stone, Elias Blackwood. The name sent a chill down her spine, triggering a memory from her childhood, a local legend whispered among the townsfolk. Elias Blackwood was said to be a recluse who roamed these woods, a man twisted by isolation and darkness. Rumors spoke of strange rituals, missing hikers, and a curse that hung over the forest like a shroud. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, Sarah delved deeper into the legend of Elias Blackwood. She unearthed old newspaper clippings, police reports, and eyewitness accounts, all pointing to a dark history hidden within these woods. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, a series of unsolved disappearances, sightings of a masked figure, and strange occurrences tied to the Blackwood family estate, long abandoned and shrouded in mystery. With newfound determination, Sarah set her sights on the Blackwood estate, determined to uncover the secrets that lay dormant within its walls. But as she approached the decrepit mansion, a sense of unease washed over her. The estate was a maze of overgrown gardens, crumbling statues, and twisted corridors. Every step felt like a descent into madness, the air thick with the weight of centuries-old secrets. As Sarah ventured deeper into the mansion, she encountered remnants of a life once lived, a child's toy left forgotten, faded portraits staring down with accusing eyes, and journals filled with cryptic writings hinting at forbidden knowledge. But her exploration was cut short by a chilling realization: the mansion was not abandoned. Someone, or something, lurked within its decaying walls, watching her every move. Sarah's heart raced as she navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the Blackwood estate. Every shadow seemed to writhe with hidden malice, and every creak of the old floorboards echoed like a sinister whisper. She stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its entrance concealed behind a tapestry depicting scenes of a bygone era. Pushing aside the heavy fabric, Sarah entered the chamber, her breath catching in her throat at the sight before her. The room was a macabre tableau, a collection of oddities and artifacts that spoke of dark rituals and arcane practices. Shelves lined with dusty tomes bound in human skin, a pentagram etched into the stone floor, and jars filled with preserved organs adorned the chamber. As Sarah's eyes adjusted to the dim light, she noticed a journal lying open on a makeshift altar. The pages were filled with ramblings and incantations, written in a hand that seemed to shift and warp as she read. The journal spoke of Elias Blackwood's descent into madness, his obsession with the occult, and his pact with dark forces that promised power at a terrible cost. It hinted at rituals conducted in the dead of night, sacrifices made to appease ancient entities, and a curse that bound the Blackwood bloodline to the forest itself. Fear gripped Sarah's heart as she realized the implications of what she had uncovered. The disappearances, the symbols, the legends, all tied back to the dark legacy of Elias Blackwood and his unholy pact. Before she could delve further into the journal, a sound echoed through the chamber, a soft, mournful wail that sent chills down her spine. Sarah's instincts screamed at her to flee, but her curiosity compelled her to investigate. Following the sound, she found herself in a hidden chamber beneath the estate, its walls adorned with symbols of protection and warding. At the center of the chamber lay a stone sarcophagus, sealed shut with ancient runes. A sense of dread washed over Sarah as she realized the significance of the sarcophagus. It was said to contain the remains of Elias Blackwood himself, bound by powerful magic to prevent his return. But as she approached, a voice whispered in her mind, a voice that spoke of promises and power, of secrets long buried and forgotten. It beckoned her closer, promising answers to the questions that plagued her. Against her better judgment, Sarah reached out to the sarcophagus, her fingers trembling as they brushed against the cold stone. A surge of energy coursed through her, a whisper of ancient knowledge seeping into her consciousness. Visions flashed before her eyes, images of Elias Blackwood conducting dark rituals, communing with entities from beyond the veil, and unlocking secrets that should have remained hidden. The curse that bound the Blackwood family, the disappearances in the forest, the monstrous creature that saved her, all pieces of a puzzle that threatened to consume her sanity. With a gasp, Sarah pulled away, the visions fading but leaving an indelible mark on her mind. She staggered back, the weight of her discoveries bearing down on her like a crushing weight. As she stumbled out of the hidden chamber and back into the estate's corridors, Sarah knew that she had crossed a threshold from which there was no turning back. The darkness that lurked within the Blackwood estate had seeped into her soul, leaving her teetering on the edge of madness. But amidst the fear and uncertainty, a spark of determination ignited within her. She would uncover the truth, confront the horrors that lurked in the shadows, and find a way to break the curse that bound them all. With newfound resolve, Sarah ventured deeper into the estate, her footsteps echoing in the empty halls. The night stretched on, each moment fraught with tension and dread. And as the darkness closed in around her, Sarah knew that the true horror of the Blackwood estate had yet to reveal itself. As Sarah delved deeper into the secrets of the Blackwood estate, the air grew heavier with a palpable sense of malevolence. Every step she took felt like a descent into madness, the walls of the ancient mansion closing in around her like a suffocating embrace. She stumbled upon hidden passages and forgotten chambers, each revealing more of the estate's dark history. Strange whispers followed her, taunting and tempting, as if the very walls themselves were alive with malignant intent. In one chamber, Sarah discovered a collection of old photographs, faded images of the Blackwood family spanning generations. But as she studied the faces captured in time, she noticed a recurring motif, a dark figure lurking in the background of each photo, its features obscured by shadow. The realization sent a chill down her spine. Was this the same figure she had glimpsed in the woods, the one who had saved her from the serial killer? And what connection did it have to the cursed legacy of the Blackwood family? Driven by a mix of fear and determination, Sarah pressed on, determined to uncover the truth no matter the cost. She found herself drawn to a locked door at the end of a hidden corridor, its surface etched with intricate symbols and sigils. With trembling hands, Sarah traced the patterns, feeling a faint hum of energy beneath her fingertips. The door yielded to her touch, swinging open to reveal a chamber bathed in a sickly green light. Inside, Sarah found herself face to face with a twisted tableau, a ritualistic altar adorned with candles, ancient tomes bound in human skin, and a portrait of Elias Blackwood himself, his eyes seeming to follow her every move. As she approached the altar, a voice echoed through the chamber, a rasping whisper that spoke of promises and sacrifices. Sarah recoiled, her instincts screaming at her to flee, but something compelled her to stay. The voice belonged to a spectral figure, a wraith-like apparition clad in tattered robes, its eyes burning with an otherworldly light. It identified itself as the guardian of the Blackwood legacy, bound to protect the secrets hidden within the estate. The guardian spoke of Elias Blackwood's descent into darkness, his obsession with forbidden knowledge, and his pact with entities from the void. It revealed that the cursed bloodline of the Blackwoods was intertwined with ancient powers, passed down through generations to those deemed worthy, or cursed, to inherit the legacy. Sarah's mind reeled with the implications of what she was hearing. The disappearances in the forest, the creature that had saved her, the whispers and shadows that haunted her every step, all tied back to the cursed lineage of Elias Blackwood and the dark forces that lurked within the estate. But amidst the revelations, the Guardian offered Sarah a choice, a chance to embrace the darkness and claim the power that lay dormant within her bloodline. It spoke of unlocking her true potential, of wielding the very forces that had shaped the Blackwood legacy for centuries. Temptation warred with fear as Sarah grappled with the decision before her. Should she embrace the darkness and seek power beyond her wildest dreams, or should she reject the legacy that threatened to consume her? As she stood at the crossroads of destiny, the mansion seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy, its walls closing in around her like a predatory beast. The Guardian's gaze bore into her soul, awaiting her decision with bated breath. As Sarah stood before the Guardian of the Blackwood legacy, the weight of her decision bore down on her like a crushing weight. The offer of power, of tapping into ancient forces beyond comprehension, was both alluring and terrifying. She knew that whichever path she chose would shape her fate and the fate of those around her. The chamber seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, the candles flickering ominously as if in anticipation. The Guardian's eyes bore into Sarah, its voice a haunting echo in the stillness of the room. "You have the blood of the Blackwoods within you," the Guardian intoned, its voice reverberating with an unearthly resonance. "Embrace your legacy, and all the power of the Ancient Ones shall be yours." Sarah's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. On one hand, the allure of power and knowledge beckoned to her, promising a means to protect herself and unravel the mysteries that had plagued her since that fateful camping trip. On the other hand, she feared the consequences of delving into the darkness, of becoming a pawn in a game she barely understood. As she hesitated, torn between temptation and caution, the Guardian's spectral form seemed to waver, its features shifting like smoke in the wind. It reached out a ghostly hand, offering Sarah a book bound in cracked leather, a grimoire containing the forbidden secrets of the Blackwood legacy. "Take this, and the path to your destiny shall be revealed," the Guardian whispered, its voice a siren's call laced with danger. Sarah hesitated, her hand hovering over the ancient tome. She could feel the power emanating from its pages, a tantalizing promise of knowledge and abilities beyond mortal comprehension. But she also sensed the darkness that lurked within, a darkness that threatened to consume her if she dared to delve too deep. Outside the chamber, the mansion seemed to groan and shift, as if reacting to the pivotal moment unfolding within its walls. Shadows danced in the corners, and the air grew heavy with a sense of impending doom. With a deep breath, Sarah made her decision. She reached out and took the grimoire, feeling a surge of energy course through her veins. The Guardian's eyes gleamed with approval, and a smile played at the edges of its spectral form. "You have chosen wisely," the Guardian murmured. "Now, the true journey begins." As Sarah flipped through the pages of the grimoire, she felt a rush of information flooding her mind, ancient incantations, rituals of power, and the secrets of harnessing the energies of the void. It was both exhilarating and terrifying, like standing at the edge of a bottomless abyss. Armed with newfound knowledge, Sarah ventured deeper into the Blackwood estate, her senses heightened and her resolve steeled. She encountered more hidden chambers, each containing clues to the dark history of the Blackwood family and the entities they had bargained with. But with knowledge came danger. Sarah found herself pursued by malevolent forces, shadows that seemed to have a life of their own, whispers that echoed with malice, and manifestations of ancient entities that defied comprehension. Yet, with each encounter, Sarah grew stronger. She learned to wield the powers bestowed upon her by the grimoire, channeling energies that warped reality itself. She became a force to be reckoned with, a beacon of light in the encroaching darkness. But the more she delved into the mysteries of the Blackwood estate, the more she realized that there were darker forces at play. The legacy of Elias Blackwood was not just a tale of ancient pacts and cursed bloodlines, it was a web of deceit, manipulation, and betrayal that spanned centuries. Sarah uncovered hidden truths, betrayals among the Blackwood family, alliances forged with malevolent entities, and a grand design that threatened to plunge the world into chaos. And at the center of it all was a being of unimaginable power, a being whose very existence threatened to unravel the fabric of reality. As Sarah pieced together the puzzle, she realized that her journey was far from over. The Guardian had warned her of a looming darkness, a darkness that sought to claim her newfound powers for its own twisted purposes. With determination burning in her heart, Sarah vowed to confront the darkness head-on. She would unravel the mysteries of the Blackwood legacy, expose the truth hidden within the shadows, and confront the ancient entity that lurked at the heart of it all. The mansion groaned and shifted, its walls seeming to close in around Sarah as she prepared for the final confrontation. The air crackled with arcane energy, and the very fabric of reality seemed to warp and bend. And as Sarah stood on the precipice of destiny, ready to face whatever horrors awaited her, she knew that the true horror of the Blackwood legacy was yet to be revealed. Sarah stood at the threshold of the final chamber within the Blackwood estate, her heart pounding in anticipation and dread. The air crackled with malevolent energy, and the shadows seemed to twist and writhe like living entities. With the grimoire clutched tightly in her hand, Sarah steeled herself for what lay ahead. She could sense the ancient entity's presence, a looming darkness that threatened to consume everything in its path. As she stepped into the chamber, the atmosphere grew even more oppressive. Symbols etched into the walls glowed with an eerie light, casting grotesque shadows that danced across the floor. The air was thick with the scent of decay and ancient magic. At the center of the chamber stood a towering figure, a manifestation of the ancient entity that had plagued the Blackwood family for generations. Its form was nebulous, shifting and changing as if struggling to maintain a physical presence in the mortal realm. Sarah, the entity's voice echoed through the chamber, a cacophony of whispers and roars. You dare to challenge the legacy of the Blackwoods? You are but a pawn in a game far beyond your understanding. Sarah squared her shoulders, her resolve unshaken. I will not be a pawn in anyone's game, she declared, her voice ringing with determination. I will unravel the truth, no matter the cost. The entity laughed, a chilling sound that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. You think you can defy me? I am the embodiment of ancient power, of darkness that predates the very fabric of reality. You are nothing but a fleeting mortal, a speck of dust in the grand scheme of things. Undeterred, Sarah raised the grimoire, channeling the energies within. Arcane symbols glowed on her skin, and a surge of power flowed through her veins. She spoke words of ancient power, invoking forces that even the entity could not ignore. The chamber trembled as the clash of energies erupted, reality warping and twisting around them. Shadows coalesced into monstrous forms, and the very walls of the estate seemed to rebel against the intrusion of such immense power. Sarah and the entity battled on, their conflict escalating into a cataclysmic struggle that threatened to tear the fabric of the universe apart. Spells collided, energies clashed, and the air crackled with raw magic. In a final, desperate gambit, Sarah unleashed a burst of pure energy from the grimoire, a blast of light that engulfed the chamber in blinding radiance. The entity howled in agony, its form dissipating like smoke in the wind. But as the light faded, Sarah realized the cost of her victory. The Blackwood estate crumbled around her, the ancient magic that bound it to the entity unraveling. She staggered through collapsing corridors, dodging falling debris as reality itself seemed to unravel. With a final burst of effort, Sarah stumbled out of the estate, collapsing on the ground outside as the mansion collapsed in on itself in a storm of dust and rubble. As she lay there, battered and bruised but victorious, Sarah knew that her journey was far from over. The Blackwood legacy had been shattered, but the darkness that had fueled it still lingered, waiting to be unleashed once more. With the grimoire clutched tightly to her chest, Sarah made a vow to use her newfound knowledge and power to prevent such horrors from ever happening again. She would be a guardian against the darkness, a beacon of hope in a world plagued by ancient evils. But as she looked up at the ruins of the Blackwood estate, a sense of unease settled over her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something far darker and more insidious lurked in the shadows, waiting for its chance to rise again. The forest echoed with the sounds of destruction, the remnants of the cursed legacy fading into memory. But Sarah knew that the true horror of the Blackwood estate would never truly be forgotten. In the heart of the Pacific Northwest, nestled among vast forests and towering peaks, lay the small, often overlooked town of Grendel's Hollow. Renowned for its breathtaking landscapes and pristine wilderness, the town was a haven for hikers, campers, and all who sought the solace of nature. However, beneath its serene exterior, Grendel's Hollow harbored dark secrets and tales that whispered through the pines, carried on the wind and fog that often shrouded the woods. Liam Donnelly, an experienced hiker and budding filmmaker, was drawn to Grendel's Hollow by stories of its untouched beauty and haunting history. Armed with his camera and a backpack full of camping gear, Liam set out to create a documentary for his YouTube channel, focusing on the thrilling and terrifying experiences reported by visitors to the Hollow's forests. He planned to spend a week in the wilderness, recording every detail of his journey. Upon his arrival, the local townsfolk, with their weathered faces and wary eyes, warned him of the woods. They spoke of strange disappearances, eerie lights seen floating between the trees at night, and an unsettling feeling of being watched. Despite their warnings, or perhaps because of them, Liam felt a surge of excitement. This was exactly the kind of story he wanted to capture. His first day passed without incident, with Liam hiking deep into the forest and setting up camp near an old, glistening lake said to be the heart of the Hollow's mysteries. As dusk fell, he gathered wood for a fire, the crackling flames a small comfort against the creeping chill of the night. With his camera rolling, he recounted the legends he'd heard, his voice a low narration against the backdrop of an increasingly wild chorus of nighttime forest sounds. That night, as Liam lay in his tent, the stillness was shattered by a sudden, shrill scream, a sound not quite animal and not quite human. Grabbing his camera, he ventured outside, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The forest was eerily silent now, as if holding its breath. He recorded a whispered commentary, noting the abrupt change in the atmosphere. The next few days were a blend of natural beauty and unnerving experiences. Liam captured footage of fog that seemed to move against the wind, shadows that flickered just beyond the reach of his light, and inexplicable cold spots in the warmth of the afternoon sun. Each night, the strange noises continued, sometimes distant, sometimes uncomfortably close. On his fifth night, Liam woke to find his campsite bathed in a faint, ethereal glow. His camera, which he'd left on a tripod facing the tent, recorded what he could only describe as orbs of light drifting through the trees. They moved with purpose, swirling around the campsite before disappearing into the darkness. Reviewing the footage in the dim light of dawn, Liam felt a mix of fear and fascination. This was beyond anything he had expected to encounter. Determined to discover the source of these phenomena, Liam decided to follow the lights. He packed up his gear and traced the path he believed the orbs had taken. As he delved deeper into the forest, the air grew colder, the trees denser. He felt an overwhelming sense of isolation, as if he had stepped into another world. After hours of hiking, he came across an old cabin, its windows boarded, the wood aged and covered with moss. The air around it was thick with the scent of decay. Liam's camera captured every detail as he approached the door, which swung gently on its hinges, despite there being no breeze. Inside, the cabin was shrouded in shadows, but he could make out the faint outline of furniture and a fireplace choked with ashes. As he explored, the floorboards creaking under his weight, he found old, yellowed photographs scattered on a dusty table. They showed a family, their expressions somber, eyes seeming to follow him as he moved around the room. In the corner of one photo, a figure stood apart from the others, blurred almost beyond recognition, but its presence felt menacing, even from the faded paper. Suddenly, Liam heard the door slammed shut behind him. Whipping around, his heart racing, he saw nothing but the now sealed entrance. The room grew colder, the shadows deeper, and his camera's battery, fully charged that morning, began to drain rapidly. As Liam turned back to the room, his flashlight flickering, he saw the figure from the photograph standing in the corner of the cabin. It was no longer blurred but terrifyingly clear. It stared at him with hollow eyes, its mouth twisted in a silent scream. As Liam raised his camera, the figure advanced, its movements jerky and unnatural. The camera captured a distorted image of the figure lunging toward him before the footage ended abruptly, cutting to static. The screen remained black for a moment before the words appeared, "To be continued." This is where the story leaves off, with Liam's fate hanging in the dark, uncertain depths of Grendel's Hollow. The last frame frozen on the screen was a blur of motion, the figure's contorted form looming over Liam, its presence palpable even through the digital distortion. In the eerie silence that followed, the forest seemed to hold its breath, the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures muted as if anticipating the outcome of the encounter. The camera's static-filled screen was a stark reminder of the sudden and inexplicable interruption, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats, their minds racing with questions and anticipation. Hours passed, and the cabin remained shrouded in an oppressive stillness. The only sound was the occasional creak of old wood, as if the very structure of the cabin itself was alive and watching, waiting for something to unfold within its walls. Meanwhile, back in the town of Grendel's Hollow, whispers began to circulate among the locals. A few claimed to have seen strange lights flickering in the direction of the old cabin, while others spoke of a chill in the air that seemed to seep into their bones, even on the warmest of nights. Among those who took note of these whispers was Emily Hayes, a longtime resident of the town and an amateur historian with a keen interest in the supernatural. Emily had spent years cataloging the stories and legends of Grendel's Hollow, piecing together fragments of forgotten lore and half-truths passed down through generations. When news of Liam's expedition and subsequent disappearance reached her ears, Emily's curiosity was piqued. She sensed that there was more to the story than met the eye, that the secrets of the forest were stirring once again, beckoning her to unravel their mysteries. Armed with her own camera, a notebook filled with research, and a determination bordering on obsession, Emily set out into the woods, following the trail that Liam had taken. The forest welcomed her with a deceptive tranquility, sunlight filtering through the canopy in dappled patterns, birdsong filling the air. But Emily knew better than to trust the illusion of peace. She had seen firsthand how quickly the wilderness of Grendel's Hollow could shift from serene to sinister, how the trees whispered secrets that only the brave, or the foolish, dared to listen to. As she neared the old cabin, Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The atmosphere had changed, the air heavy with an unseen presence that sent shivers racing across her skin. Her camera rolled, capturing every step of her approach, every creak of a branch, every flutter of a leaf. The cabin loomed ahead, its weathered facade a testament to years of neglect and abandonment. Emily's gaze swept over the boarded windows, the overgrown path leading to the door, the sense of foreboding growing with each passing moment. She hesitated only briefly before pushing open the door, the hinges groaning in protest as if warning her to turn back. But Emily pressed on, her determination unwavering, her footsteps echoing in the empty interior of the cabin. The air inside was thick with dust and the scent of decay, memories of lives long gone mingling with the lingering presence of something darker, something that lurked just beyond the edge of perception. Emily's camera panned across the room, capturing the same table littered with old photographs, the same fireplace choked with ashes, the same sense of unease that seemed to seep from the very walls. But there was something else, something new, a faint whisper, barely audible but unmistakably there, weaving through the silence like a thread of darkness. She followed the sound, her flashlight cutting through the shadows, until she reached a hidden trapdoor concealed beneath a tattered rug. With a sense of trepidation, Emily pulled open the trapdoor, revealing a narrow staircase that descended into the earth below. The darkness seemed to swallow her as she descended, each step echoing in the confined space, the air growing colder with each passing moment. At the bottom of the stairs, Emily found herself in a subterranean chamber, the walls lined with shelves containing ancient tomes and arcane artifacts. Her camera recorded everything, the eerie glow of dimly lit lanterns, the flickering shadows that danced across the stone walls, the unmistakable sense that she had stumbled upon something far beyond her understanding. As Emily moved deeper into the chamber, drawn by an unseen force, she came upon a pedestal upon which rested a peculiar object, a dagger, its blade etched with intricate runes, its hilt adorned with symbols of unknown origin. Without hesitation, Emily reached out, her fingers brushing against the cold metal of the dagger. As she did, a surge of energy coursed through her, images flashing before her eyes, visions of rituals performed in the dead of night, of figures cloaked in shadow, of a darkness that threatened to consume everything in its path. With a gasp, Emily withdrew her hand, the visions fading but leaving behind a lingering sense of dread. She knew then that she had stumbled upon something far more sinister than she had ever imagined, something that had drawn Liam into its grasp and now threatened to ensnare her as well. But Emily was not one to back down from a challenge, especially when it came to uncovering the truth. With renewed determination, she turned her camera to face herself, her expression resolute despite the fear that gnawed at her insides. To be continued, she whispered into the lens, her voice a vow and a warning, a promise to uncover the secrets of Grendel's Hollow no matter the cost. And with that, the screen faded to black, leaving viewers with a sense of anticipation and unease, wondering what dark revelations awaited Emily in the depths of the forest, and what horrors she would uncover in her quest for the truth. As Emily stood in the dimly lit chamber, her heart pounding in her chest, she couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and malevolent lurked just beyond her sight. The air was heavy with a sense of impending doom, as if the very walls of the chamber were closing in, trapping her in a web of darkness and mystery. She took a deep breath, steeling herself against the rising tide of fear. With her camera still recording, Emily began to examine the artifacts that lined the shelves. Each item seemed to hold a story of its own, a whisper of forgotten rituals and forbidden knowledge. One particular book caught her eye, a leather-bound tome with pages yellowed with age. The symbols etched on its cover seemed to writhe and shift, as if alive. As Emily opened the book, the musty scent of ancient parchment filled the air, and she felt a surge of trepidation mingled with curiosity. The pages were filled with handwritten text in a language she couldn't decipher, interspersed with crude illustrations of grotesque creatures and arcane symbols. Emily's fingers traced the lines of text, her mind racing as she tried to make sense of the cryptic writings. Suddenly, a whisper echoed through the chamber, a voice so faint it was almost imperceptible. Emily froze, her heart skipping a beat as she strained to listen. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, as if urging her to uncover its secrets. With trembling hands, Emily turned back to her camera, her voice barely a whisper as she spoke. "I don't know what's happening in this place, but there's something here, something that doesn't want to be forgotten." As if in response, the lanterns in the chamber flickered, casting dancing shadows across the walls. Emily's senses were on high alert, every creak of the old chamber echoing like a gunshot in the silence. She turned her attention back to the book, flipping through its pages until she came upon a section that seemed to describe a ritual, an ancient ceremony meant to open a gateway to another realm, a realm of darkness and despair. The more Emily read, the more she realized the gravity of what she had stumbled upon. This wasn't just a forgotten chamber filled with relics of the past, it was a gateway, a portal to a world beyond comprehension. But before she could delve further into the ritual, a noise echoed through the chamber, a scraping sound, like claws against stone. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she scanned the room, her flashlight casting wild shadows in every direction. And then she saw it, a figure, shrouded in darkness, standing at the far end of the chamber. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, fixing Emily in place with an intensity that sent a chill down her spine. Without hesitation, Emily raised her camera, her hands shaking but her resolve unwavering. She zoomed in on the figure, capturing its form on film, a creature unlike anything she had ever seen, a being of nightmares and ancient lore. As she recorded, the creature moved closer, its movements fluid yet unnatural, as if defying the laws of physics. Emily's heart raced as she realized the danger she was in, but she couldn't tear her gaze away from the camera's viewfinder. With a sudden burst of movement, the creature lunged forward, its inhuman screech reverberating through the chamber. Emily stumbled backward, her camera capturing the chaos and terror unfolding before her. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, the creature vanished, leaving Emily alone in the chamber, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The air seemed to shimmer with residual energy, a palpable sense of malevolence lingering in the darkness. With a shaky hand, Emily turned off her camera, the screen fading to black. The chamber was silent once more, the only sound the echo of her own heartbeat. To be continued, Emily whispered, her voice barely audible in the oppressive stillness. She knew that the horrors she had encountered were only the beginning, that there were deeper mysteries waiting to be uncovered in the depths of Grendel's Hollow. And with that, the screen remained blank, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats, wondering what nightmares awaited Emily in the next chapter of her harrowing journey into the unknown. The chamber seemed to hold its breath, as if the very air was waiting for Emily's next move. She stood there, the weight of the ancient tome in her hands, its pages whispering secrets that she could not yet comprehend. Every fiber of her being screamed for her to run, to flee from the darkness that lurked in the shadows. But her curiosity, her need to uncover the truth, kept her rooted in place. With a deep breath, Emily turned back to the book, determined to decipher its cryptic contents. The text spoke of a ritual, an invocation of dark forces, a pact with entities from beyond the veil. It detailed the steps, the incantations, the sacrifices required to open the gateway to the other realm. As Emily read on, the chamber seemed to come alive around her. Shadows danced along the walls, forming grotesque shapes that taunted her from the periphery of her vision. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, as if urging her to complete the ritual, to unlock the secrets that lay dormant for centuries. But Emily hesitated. She knew the dangers that lurked in delving too deeply into the forbidden, the consequences of tampering with forces beyond mortal comprehension. Yet, the allure of knowledge, of power, was a seductive whisper in her mind, tempting her to take that final step into the unknown. With trembling hands, Emily reached for the dagger she had found earlier, the dagger with its blade etched with ancient runes, its hilt pulsing with an otherworldly energy. She hesitated, the weight of her decision pressing down on her like a leaden shroud. Outside the chamber, the forest echoed with the sounds of the night, rustling leaves, distant howls, the mournful hoot of an owl. But within the confines of the ancient chamber, time seemed to stand still, the only sound the rhythmic thud of Emily's heartbeat. As she held the dagger aloft, the runes on its blade seemed to glow with a dim, ominous light. Emily closed her eyes, trying to steady her trembling breaths. Her mind raced with questions, doubts, fears, but also with a burning curiosity, a desperate need to understand. Slowly, almost reluctantly, Emily began to recite the incantations from the ancient tome. The words felt alien on her tongue, each syllable heavy with power and consequence. The chamber seemed to pulse with energy, the air crackling with unseen forces. With each line of the incantation, Emily felt a surge of something primal, something raw and untamed, coursing through her veins. The shadows danced more frenetically, the whispers grew into a cacophony of voices that echoed in her mind. And then, with the final words of the incantation hanging in the air, Emily plunged the dagger into the ancient tome, its blade sinking into the pages with a sickening squelch. The chamber erupted with blinding light, a vortex of energy swirling around Emily, pulling her into its chaotic embrace. The last thing Emily saw before everything went black was the image of the creature, the being of nightmares and ancient lore, emerging from the shadows, its eyes glowing with hunger and malice. And then, there was nothing. No sound, no light, only a void of emptiness and silence. The screen remained blank, the camera still recording, as if capturing the aftermath of Emily's fateful decision. The forest outside the chamber seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the cataclysmic events unfolding within. To be continued, the screen whispered, a promise of more horrors to come, more mysteries to unravel in the twisted depths of Grendel's Hollow. And with that, the story hung in limbo, leaving viewers to wonder what dark fate awaited Emily, what horrors would emerge from the gateway she had unwittingly opened, and what secrets of the outdoors' scary realms would be revealed in the next chilling chapter. The darkness seemed to stretch on forever, an endless void devoid of light or sound. Emily was lost in the emptiness, her senses dulled by the overwhelming nothingness that surrounded her. She tried to move, to scream, to do anything to break free from the suffocating abyss, but her efforts were futile. It was as if she had become a part of the void itself, trapped in a nightmarish limbo with no escape. Time lost all meaning in the void. Seconds stretched into eternity, each moment filled with a sense of impending dread. Emily's mind raced with visions of the creature, of the ancient tome, of the dagger and the forbidden ritual she had unleashed. Regret gnawed at her, a bitter taste in her mouth as she realized the magnitude of her folly. And then, in the depths of the darkness, a flicker of light appeared, a single point of brilliance amidst the nothingness. It grew brighter, expanding into a blinding flash that seared through Emily's consciousness. She cried out, a primal scream torn from her lips as she was pulled back into reality. When Emily opened her eyes, she found herself standing in the ancient chamber once more. But everything had changed. The walls were no longer stone but pulsated with a sickly green glow, as if infused with a dark magic. The shelves that had once held artifacts now displayed grotesque totems and forbidden relics, each emanating an aura of malevolence. Emily's heart raced as she realized that she was no longer alone. Figures moved in the shadows, indistinct shapes that seemed to shift and warp with every passing moment. Whispers echoed through the chamber, unintelligible words that sent shivers down Emily's spine. With trembling hands, Emily reached for her camera, desperate to document the horrors unfolding before her. But when she turned it on, the screen remained blank, the device unresponsive. Panic clawed at her as she realized that she was cut off from the outside world, trapped in this nightmarish realm with no means of escape. The figures in the shadows drew closer, their forms becoming clearer with each step. They were grotesque, twisted beings that defied logic and reason. Some had too many eyes, others too many limbs, all of them exuding an aura of primal hunger and madness. Emily backed away, her footsteps echoing in the chamber. She searched for a way out, but the walls seemed to shift and morph, closing in around her like the jaws of a predator. The whispers grew louder, forming into a chorus of deranged laughter and guttural chants. And then, from the darkness, the creature emerged, the same entity that had haunted her visions, its eyes glowing with a hunger that sent a chill down Emily's spine. It spoke, its voice a cacophony of overlapping tones that reverberated through the chamber. "You have awakened us," the creature hissed, its form shifting and changing with every word. "You have opened the gateway, and now the ancient ones are free." Emily's mind raced as she tried to make sense of the creature's words. What ancient ones? What gateway had she opened? Fear gripped her heart as she realized the magnitude of her actions, the consequences of her curiosity. "We hunger," the creature continued, its voice a sickening blend of malice and hunger. "We crave souls, mortal flesh to sustain us." Emily knew then that there was no escape, no hope of survival in this twisted realm. She had unleashed something beyond her comprehension, something that hungered for destruction and chaos. With a final surge of defiance, Emily raised her camera once more, determined to capture the horrors she faced, to leave a record of her folly for anyone who might come after her. But as she pressed the record button, the screen flickered to life, displaying a single message. No signal. The realization hit Emily like a physical blow. She was truly alone, cut off from the world, trapped in a realm of nightmares with no way out. The chamber seemed to close in around her, the figures in the shadows drawing closer with each passing moment. And then, in a final act of desperation, Emily spoke into the camera, her voice a whisper of defiance and resignation. "If anyone finds this," she said, her words echoing through the chamber, "beware the outdoors' scary secrets. Some doors are better left unopened, some knowledge better left buried. Learn from my mistake, and may whatever gods exist have mercy on us all." With that, Emily's recording ended, the screen fading to black once more. The chamber was silent once more, the only sound the whispers of the Ancient Ones and Emily's echoing words of warning. The story of Emily's journey into the outdoors' terrifying mysteries ended here, leaving viewers with a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurk in the unknown, and the horrors that await those who dare to seek them out. What Caleb found in the hidden sub-basement of the Meyerfield Hotel was beyond anything he could have imagined. The air was thick with dust and the smell of mildew. As his flashlight swept across the room, it revealed walls covered in bizarre, arcane symbols that seemed to pulsate unnervingly as if reacting to his presence. In the center of the room, there was a large, stone altar, stained with what looked disturbingly like dried blood. Caleb's heart pounded in his chest as he approached the altar, his camera recording every detail. Scattered around the altar were various objects that looked like ritualistic tools, candles, bowls filled with an assortment of what appeared to be bones, and old, leather-bound books that were open to pages filled with cryptic texts and disturbing illustrations. As he examined the books, Caleb noticed that one of them was a journal, seemingly belonging to Eliza Meyerfield herself. The entries were erratic, filled with ramblings about gateways to another world and communing with entities beyond human comprehension. Eliza wrote about her rituals in great detail, describing them as necessary sacrifices to maintain a barrier between the worlds. Feeling a growing sense of dread, Caleb realized that the hotel's hauntings might not just be the result of a troubled past but were perhaps manifestations of something much more sinister and ancient. The final entry in Eliza's journal was the most disturbing. It was written hastily, with a tone of desperation and fear, warning of a ritual gone wrong and an entity that had been accidentally unleashed. The air in the basement grew colder, and a sense of palpable malevolence filled the space. Caleb's flashlight flickered as if struggling against an unseen force. Just as he was about to speak to his camera, a low, guttural growl echoed through the basement, freezing him in place. The sound seemed to come from all around him, resonating with the dark energy of the room. Terrified but compelled to continue, Caleb turned his camera to the darkest corner of the basement where the growl had originated. His light dimly illuminated what appeared to be a small, hidden doorway, partially obscured by fallen debris and old furniture. As he cleared the debris to open the door, the air became charged with a static energy that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. Behind the door was a narrow tunnel that descended further into the darkness. Caleb hesitated, aware of the dangers but driven by his need to discover the truth. He entered the tunnel, the walls closing in around him as he moved deeper underground. The tunnel finally opened into a large cavern, and what he found there was horrific. The cavern was filled with statues that were too lifelike to be mere sculptures. They were of people, frozen in expressions of terror and agony. As Caleb's flashlight passed over them, it became clear that these were not statues but petrified victims, their faces eternally captured in their final moments of horror. At the center of the cavern stood a large, black stone that pulsed with a dark light. The air around the stone was distorted, as if the very fabric of reality was thinner there. Whispers filled the cavern, voices begging for help, warning him to leave, and malicious laughs that seemed to mock his fear. Caleb filmed everything, his voice barely a whisper as he narrated the unspeakable horror he was witnessing. He knew he should leave, that he should run from this nightmare and never look back, but the journalist in him needed answers. He approached the black stone, his camera pointed at its pulsing surface, and reached out to touch it. As his fingers brushed against the stone, the cavern shook violently. The air erupted with screams, and the ground beneath him cracked open, emitting a blinding light. Caleb stumbled back, his camera falling to the ground as he tried to shield his eyes from the light. The last thing the camera recorded before it cut out was Caleb's silhouette against the intense light, his shadow elongated and distorted as if being pulled into the fissure in the ground. The screen went black, leaving his audience in stunned silence, wondering what fate had befallen the brave journalist. The mystery of the Meyerfield Hotel had deepened, and Caleb's footage would only serve to draw more curious and fearless souls to its haunted halls. As the story paused here, viewers would be left hanging, pondering the depths of the horror that lay beneath the Meyerfield Hotel, eager for the next installment to shed light on the dark secrets that Caleb had uncovered. As the camera's feed snapped back to life, the image was shaky, panning across the cavern floor in a dizzying whirl before finally stabilizing. The fissure that had erupted with blinding light now smoldered with a less intense glow, allowing Caleb's whereabouts to remain uncertain. The camera, apparently knocked from Caleb's grasp, lay on its side, offering a skewed view of the cavern. Minutes passed with eerie silence until faint sounds broke the stillness. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, echoed through the cavern. The camera's angle caught just the edge of Caleb's shoes as he stumbled back into view, clutching his head, his breathing ragged and labored. He seemed disoriented, struggling to regain his composure. He picked up the camera, turning it to face himself. His face was pale, eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe. "I don't know if you can see this," Caleb whispered into the camera, his voice trembling. "But I think I touched something ancient and powerful. I can't explain it. I saw things, visions or memories, I don't know. This place, it's not just haunted. It's a gateway, a thin place where our world and something else meet." Turning the camera away from himself, Caleb aimed it at the black stone. Now inert and much less menacing in appearance, it sat like a dormant beast in the middle of the cavern. "This stone, it's at the heart of it all. I think it's some kind of seal or portal. Eliza Meyerfield must have known about it, tried to control it. But something went wrong." Caleb then moved slowly through the cavern, the camera capturing the eerie, petrified figures. "These people," he continued, his voice a mix of horror and sadness, "they were like us, curious, seeking answers or perhaps thrill. Caught in something they didn't understand." He paused, reaching out to gently touch one of the stone figures, his fingers tracing the forever terror etched into the victim's face. "They're warnings," he said softly. "Warnings that some truths are too powerful, too dangerous." Determined to learn more, Caleb retraced his steps back to the tunnel that led him to this unearthly cavern. The tunnel, however, seemed different now. The walls pulsed subtly with a faint, rhythmic throb that wasn't there before, or perhaps hadn't been noticeable. The whispers that had once filled the air were now silent, but the sense of being watched, of being not alone, was stronger than ever. The camera shook slightly as Caleb walked, his steps unsteady as if the ground beneath him was subtly shifting. He made his way back to the sub-basement, where he paused, looking around with a paranoid glance. "I feel like the hotel knows I'm here, like it's aware," he muttered into the camera. From the sub-basement, Caleb decided to explore the library once more, convinced there had to be more information about the rituals and the stone. His flashlight swept across the dusty shelves, stopping on books that now seemed to stand out as if calling for his attention. Pulling out several volumes that contained references to otherworldly gateways and protective rituals, Caleb laid them out on a table, his camera capturing the pages filled with arcane symbols and complex diagrams. As he pored over the texts, trying to piece together the puzzle, a sudden loud crash echoed through the library. The camera spun towards the source of the noise. A bookcase had fallen over, its contents spilled across the floor. But there was no sign of what could have caused it. "Is someone there?" Caleb called out, his voice echoing in the large room. There was no reply, only the sound of his own breathing and the distant, unidentifiable creaks and moans of the old hotel. The tension in the air was palpable, a sense of urgency pressing down as if time itself were running out. Caleb's eyes were wide, darting around the room as he continued to film. He knelt to pick up some of the fallen books, and that's when he noticed it, an old, almost decayed notebook that hadn't been there before. He opened it carefully, and as he read, his eyes widened in shock. The notebook contained writings that mirrored those in Eliza's journal, but these were not her writings. They were dated years after her disappearance, penned in a frantic hand. The entries spoke of someone else attempting the ritual, someone desperate to seal the breach that Eliza had accidentally opened. But like her, they had failed, and the consequences of their actions were undocumented, the entries ending abruptly. Caleb looked up from the notebook, his expression one of dawning horror. "It didn't end with Eliza," he whispered into the camera. "Someone else knew about this, tried to fix her mistakes. And now, I'm caught in the same cycle. Something about this hotel, it doesn't just haunt you, it pulls you in, makes you part of its history." Caleb's voice was heavy with realization and fear as he continued to sift through the scattered books and papers. Each piece seemed to unveil more of the hotel's dark legacy, a story not just of supernatural occurrences, but of a deeply troubled past that reached out through the ages. The hotel wasn't merely a setting for hauntings, it was an active participant, a curator of its own horrific gallery. As night fell outside, the shadows within the library grew deeper and more menacing. Caleb felt the oppressive weight of the darkness pressing against him. The air grew colder, the chill seeping into his bones. He shivered, pulling his jacket tighter around him as he continued to read from the notebook. Suddenly, the faint sound of piano music drifted through the air. Caleb froze, his heart pounding. The music was soft, melancholic, and eerily familiar. It was the same melody he had heard on his first night in the hotel. With camera in hand, he followed the sound, each step cautious and measured as he made his way back to the ballroom. The doors to the ballroom were slightly ajar, creaking ominously as he pushed them open. Inside, the grand piano sat at the far end of the room, bathed in moonlight streaming in through the tall, broken windows. The keys moved subtly, as if touched by invisible fingers, playing the haunting melody. Caleb approached slowly, his camera capturing the surreal scene. As he reached the piano, the music stopped abruptly, and the silence that followed was suffocating. He scanned the room, the camera's light sweeping across the dusty dance floor, the chandeliers that hung motionless from the ceiling, and the rows of empty chairs lined up against the walls. As he turned back to the piano, he noticed something that hadn't been there before, a single sheet of music placed neatly on the stand. Caleb picked it up, his hands trembling as he read the title, The Final Requiem. It was composed by Eliza Meyerfield. The music was complex, filled with sharp, dissonant chords and a melody that spiraled downward, as if pulling the listener into despair. Intrigued and unsettled, Caleb placed the sheet back on the piano stand and pressed a few keys. The sound was discordant, echoing weirdly as if the room itself was altering the acoustics. Feeling a rising sense of dread, Caleb turned to leave the ballroom when he heard it, a soft whisper, almost like a sigh, coming from behind him. He spun around, the camera jerking unsteadily. There was nothing there but the empty room and the silent piano. Yet, the sense of being watched was overwhelming. As he backed towards the doors, the temperature dropped sharply, his breath visible in the icy air. Then, all at once, every door in the ballroom slammed shut, plunging him into darkness. The only light came from his camera, which now flickered erratically, struggling against the oppressive darkness. Caleb's breaths came quick and ragged, his voice barely a whisper as he spoke into the camera. "I'm not alone here. There's something else, something that the rituals were meant to contain or communicate with. It's still here, in the hotel, bound to this place as much as any ghost." He moved slowly towards one of the doors, his hands shaking as he tried to open it. It wouldn't budge. Panic set in as he realized he was trapped. The whispers grew louder, turning into murmurs of disjointed voices, speaking words he couldn't quite understand. They seemed to come from the walls, the floor, the very air around him. Caleb turned the camera to face him, his face pale and drawn in the dim light. "If you're seeing this," he said, the words catching in his throat, "then I might not make it out. But I have to try to understand what's happening here, to tell its story." With a deep breath, he turned off the camera, conserving its battery for what might come next. The screen went dark, leaving the sounds of the whispering voices and the soft, melancholic piano melody to fill the silence of the night. The hotel's secrets were deep, woven into its very foundation. And as Caleb was slowly discovering, they were not eager to be uncovered. As he stood in the darkness, surrounded by voices of the past, the Meyerfield Hotel seemed to close in around him, its story far from over, its darkest chapters yet to be told. The whispers grew in intensity, merging into a cacophony of voices that seemed to claw at the very edges of Caleb's sanity. Each word, though indistinct, carried a weight of sorrow and warning, enveloping him in a blanket of dread. He felt the air thicken, as if the darkness itself was congealing, tightening around him like a noose. With the camera still off to conserve power, Caleb's only source of light was the weak beam of his flashlight, which flickered as though struggling against an unseen force. He moved cautiously, his steps echoing in the empty ballroom, each sound amplified by the silence that pressed in from all sides. He made his way to the grand windows, the moonlight casting long, sinister shadows across the dance floor. The glass was shattered in places, the jagged edges gleaming like teeth in the dim light. As he approached, a figure appeared outside, one that was indistinct and flickering, like a flame caught in a draft. It was there one moment and gone the next, leaving Caleb to question if his eyes were deceiving him or if the hotel was manifesting its haunted tales right before him. Heart pounding, Caleb returned to the piano. The sheet music titled The Final Requiem still lay there, untouched since he'd last seen it. An overwhelming impulse drove him to try and play it, to perhaps appease whatever spirits lingered in this forsaken place. His fingers pressed down on the keys, the dissonant chords filling the room, resonating with the walls and seemingly stirring the spirits to life. As the melody progressed, the temperature dropped even further, a frost forming on the inside of the windows, creeping across the floor like a living thing. The wind howled through the broken panes, and the entire hotel seemed to groan under the weight of its own tormented history. Then, abruptly, the music stopped. Caleb's hands were forced away from the keys by a power he couldn't see, his fingers numbing with cold. The whispers turned to shouts, angry and pained, echoing around him in a maelstrom of sound that threatened to overwhelm his senses. Frightened beyond reason, Caleb grabbed his camera, turned it on, and started recording once more. He spoke directly into the lens, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "This is more than just a haunted hotel. It's a prison for something ancient, something that was never meant to be disturbed. And I think it wants to be free." The building shivered as if in response, a deep rumble that felt like an earthquake. Cracks spread across the floor tiles, snaking towards the walls, which began to crumble and fall in heaps of plaster and dust. The piano, too, began to shake, its own structure succumbing to whatever force was enveloping the hotel. Caleb turned the camera to capture the destruction, backing towards the exit as he did so. But the doors remained firmly shut, trapping him inside as the room continued to deteriorate. Above the roar of the collapsing room, the melody from the piano resumed, playing by itself, the keys moving rapidly. The tune was clearer now, more demanding, as if urging him to listen, to understand. Panic set in as Caleb realized he was running out of time. He turned the camera back to himself, his back against the door, the chaos reflected in his eyes. "If anyone sees this," he shouted over the noise, "tell the story. Warn them. The Meyerfield Hotel is not just haunted, it's cursed, and the curse is real. Don't let curiosity lead you here. This place, it's alive, and it doesn't want witnesses." Just then, a loud, ear-splitting crack echoed through the room as the ceiling began to cave in. Caleb dove out of the way, the camera falling to the ground, its lens cracking upon impact, but still recording. The feed was now a chaotic blur of movement, dust, and intermittent flashes of what remained of the ballroom. The last few frames showed Caleb, his figure obscured by the settling dust, as he tried to shield himself from the falling debris. His fate was unclear as the footage ran on, the sounds of the crumbling hotel mingling with the haunting melody that played relentlessly in the background. Then, abruptly, the camera feed cut to static, leaving a chilling silence. The story of Caleb Ward and the Meyerfield Hotel ended here, buried under layers of rubble and mystery, the final notes of the final requiem echoing in the ears of anyone who dared watch the footage. The hotel's secrets remained, as alive and as menacing as ever, waiting for the next unwary soul to uncover its dark past and unleash the horrors held within.